And at this time, I'm going to let you go ahead and start, Dr. Murray.
Okay, thank you everyone, and good evening. Thank you for joining us for the College Admissions and HBCU webinar tonight. Please let me know if you have any difficulty seeing my slides or someone come off mute. If for some reason my communication goes out early on, please come off mute and let me know if you are unable to hear me, or sometimes my mute will kick in and I don't know it has kicked in. But welcome tonight to our Stafford County, for our Stafford County school students and families. We want to thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar. We do want to remind you that the webinar is being recorded for future use. And tonight, our main objectives of the webinar are to certainly equip students in Stafford County with practical strategies to help you to navigate through the college admissions process. We also want to make sure that we share information and facts about historically Black colleges and universities, and discuss any relevant information that may pertain to college admissions as a result of COVID-19. I definitely want to make this an interactive discussion, so feel free to use the chat function to share any comments that you have. And if you have questions, I will try to address some of your questions as we are talking and as I'm presenting. If for some reason I don't address your question right away, I will work to answer your question at the end of the webinar. So next, I want to take this opportunity to share that Stafford County Public Schools actually sponsored this event for the high school students out of the Office of Equity and Accountability. And I'd love to turn it over to Ms. Kristen McKinney-Nash for any opening remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. My name is Christie McKinney-Nash. I'm the Family Engagement Specialist with Stafford County Public Schools, and I work in the Office of Equity and Accountability. This is our second year doing this presentation. You'll find that it's full of a ton of great information. So get ready to take notes, get ready to look at the recording later on, because it's really hands-on, very useful information that you will find during this presentation. As a bonus to this presentation, Dr. Murray last year provided every single high school with a set of her books. So at the conclusion of this presentation, tomorrow you can visit your high school counseling team, and they have a copy of her, or both her books on file in their office, so you can touch base and kind of compare the presentation with the information that she has indeed written. And I'm sure somewhere in this presentation, you'll actually see the cover of the book, so that you'll know that it is. I was looking around my office, but my copy is at home because I have a junior, so I'm using this information as well. So this week we have this session, which we're looking at historically Black colleges and universities. Next week, we're going to be looking at the college funding process. So I encourage all of you to register and come see this. Again, this is great information. And as an HBCU grad, both Christy and I from Hampton, Dr. Murray and I from Hampton, I encourage you to take notes and learn a little bit about our little treasures of HBCUs. I also want to take a minute to recognize some of the people that I work with that are on this call. If you could just raise their hand. My right hand, Natalie Holland, one of our family engagement liaisons, Lies Ramos, who is based out of Heim. And then we have Maricela Morales, who is based out of North Stafford. And then on the phone is my supervisor, Roxana McCarthy, who is, Bendos, who is based here at Central Office. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Murray, and we can get started.
All right, fantastic. So, in conjunction with Stafford County Public School System, we are also happy to have the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated ASA Omega Chapter also supporting this event in conjunction with Stafford County Public School Systems. The ASA Omega Chapter is located right here in our county in Stafford, Virginia, and they serve Stafford and Fauquier counties. So we help students throughout both of those counties. We were chartered in June of 2014, and we are under the leadership of Greta Thompson currently. And I'm actually a member of that chapter, and so is Miss McKinney Nash. Under this particular program, we actually have a target program where we focus for the last 4 years on helping students get through the college admissions process, which is known as our #CAP program. So we work to assist high school seniors and juniors with their applications. And then we also work to promote HBCUs and share factual information about them as well. So our SASA Omega chapter is happy to actually sponsor several giveaways for tonight's event for students who are interactive and who may participate. And this is one of the giveaways that we'll talk about later, my book that Kristen mentioned. So I do want to tell you a little bit about myself. Again, I'm Dr. Christie Murray. I live here in Stafford County, actually, and I'm actually the vice president of that SASA Omega chapter I just referenced in the program chair. So all our key community service programs fall under my umbrella. I also do a lot of work helping students across the country getting accepted into college so that they can also work to graduate debt-free. And with the high cost of student loans, I think that's very important when you start thinking about what you want to do after high school. And even if you want to go to college and get an education, how do you do it in an affordable way? And so I do a lot of work through my company, Invest in Others, helping students to do that. Along my journey, I did write 2 books. The one on the left in green is the one that we'll have as a part of the giveaway today. College planning strategies I wish someone had told me, and then college funding strategies I wish someone had told me. And the second book came about after I would talk to families across the country, and they would say, you know what, Miss Christie, we got into college, but guess what? Now we got to figure out how to pay for it. And so it's going to be very important to have both of those conversations as a part of your reality. And as you're working with your parents, or if you're a parent on today, if you're a student, let me know in the chat if you are a parent or a student, because I hope it was open to both to attend. So let me know in the chat if you are representing a student or a parent in today's session. And while you are doing that, I do want to mention that I like to start out with telling my own story. Back in 1993, I was in high school. I know it's kind of been a couple of years ago, but I was in high school and I was the youngest of 3 girls. I have a set of older twin sisters who were currently in college my senior year of high school. So I went on all these college tours, came home, told my mother, Mom, I want to go to Hampton University and major in engineering. And my mother said, well, I like where you're headed, but Hampton's a private school and it's pretty expensive. You have to pick a cheaper school. But I really didn't want to go anywhere else. After going to visit all those schools, I really felt like Hampton was that school for me. And so after going, having some debates with my mother about affordability versus where I wanted to go, she finally said, okay, if you want to go to Hampton, you've got to roll up your sleeves and try to find some ways to pay for it. So I started talking to different individuals and sharing what I wanted to do. I was applying to different scholarships, and I had a whole system at home with all these applications and essays and all those things. One day I'm sitting in a class and my school counselor pulls me out. She knocks on the door and asks me to come to her office. At first I thought I was in trouble, but when I got there, she said, hey, Christie, what if I told you that there is a company who's looking to that has a scholarship, and they're looking for students who want to go to Hampton University and who are majoring in engineering. Would you be interested? And I said, well, of course I would be. That's exactly what I want to do. And so she said, you'll need to fill out this application, but there's only one caveat. It has to be postmarked by tomorrow. And I said, oh my goodness, how am I going to get that done? And she said, can you make it happen? And I thought about it. Wait a minute, I have all these essays, there's a recommendation, all these things already at home. Yeah, I can make it happen. The question is, can you get my transcripts out quick enough? And if you know anything about getting transcripts, and I hope many of you do, one of the things that you'll realize is there are multiple steps you have to take to get those transcripts from your high school. So I asked her that because I wanted to make sure she could get it out. Fast forward, I got that application in the mail. I had everything together, mailed out. The school got my transcripts out. And the company had me come out for 2 interviews. So if you're asking a question, do you have to interview for scholarships? Not all the time, but in this particular situation, I did. So after 2 interviews, I was finally selected for this scholarship. I ended up going to Hampton University for electrical engineering. That scholarship came with internships every summer that I was in college and a full time job when I graduated from college. So, with that being said, and this was all before I walked across the high school stage. And so, as I went through that process and I thought about how I'd had help, particularly with the company, with the scholarship, and my school counselor, I realized some very important things about what had taken place. And I knew that if I had been given the opportunity to help other students, to find out those things that could help them, put together some systems that are practical and easy to follow, that's exactly what I would do. So since then, I've been helping students, and I'm a practicing electrical engineer by day, but I still have a passion for helping students to be able to get to college and graduate debt free. So that's my story. And in the first book that I talked about, that green book, is really all centered on college admissions and college planning work. And what I did is I created 10 strategies to help students and their parents understand how to make sense of all that information that we're bombarded with in one place. So I streamlined it and got straight to the point so that you don't have to go sifting through the internet trying to find all these different pieces and driving yourself crazy. So I created these strategies and I know for a fact that they work. Well, you're wondering, how do I know? Because I too am a parent of students who are currently in college. Both of my sons are here. They graduated from college over the last couple of years from Prince William County schools. And the one on the left is a junior at Old Dominion University. The one on the right, he plays Division I football at Norfolk State University. And they're both entrepreneurs. So for those who think that you can only do one thing and one thing really good at a time, that's not true. You can actually be a great student, a student athlete, and an entrepreneur if that's your desire. So don't limit yourself. That's the key theme here. But as I helped my sons through high school and preparing for college, I grew to appreciate, with COVID being a reality, with technology being more present in their everyday lives, that my experience with college and their experience looked a lot different. And so I based my books off of current information about strategies that actually work. And I know they work because my son on the right, he's going to college on a full scholarship right now. 0 student loans, 0 out-of-pocket expenses. And I just want to encourage each one of you to know that that too can be your reality. So, what are we going to do today? We're going to go on a brief journey. Let's go on a little road trip. And we're going to focus on college admissions tonight. First, we'll start out talking about why is it important to have a plan and using your time wisely. Then we'll talk about creating a scholar profile. And I can't wait to tell you more about that. And then let's talk about a very important topic about how do you choose a major and then you choose your colleges. Then we'll talk about you pulling all that stuff together and actually applying to colleges. And I just added this one recently. What do you do after you've applied to the colleges? Because most of us think we're in cruise control on this journey once we've applied to colleges. And as I'm helping students every day now, here's what I figured out. No, there's still more work to be done. And I want to give you some helpful tips to understand what to do next. So I want to start off with a quick "Where are you now?" assessment. So I see in the comments that we have some students joining us today, which is excellent. We do have some parents and grandparents. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, if you are a student or the parent or grandparent of a student, please let me know in the chat what grade the student is in, because that'll help me to tailor how much information I share on different topics depending on the grade levels. It's good to see 9th graders here. In fact, I try to tell students that the earlier you start your college planning, the better off. I absolutely do not encourage students waiting until their senior year to start this process. 8th, 9th grade, my books are actually geared towards students as early as middle school. So the more you have access to knowledge and information, the more you can be deliberate, intentional, and strategic. All right, so I see some 10th graders, 9th graders, 9th through 12th graders here. So that's great. So I'll try to cover things that'll help each one of those grade levels. So I always start students out with this "Where are you now" assessment. Why? Because if you're going on any trip, if you're going to use your GPS, you usually have to put in starting this trip from home or from school or the mall, wherever your starting point is. So this is your starting point along the journey. There are 10 questions that I think every student needs to be familiar with when they're taking this journey and thinking about what they're going to do after they graduate high school. First, students and parents, do you know your current cumulative GPA? Let me know in the chat, yes or no. Please don't tell me your GPAs. I don't need to know those specifically. But let me know in the chat if you know your GPA, or parents and grandparents if you know your GPA. All right, AJ Martin, looks like you don't. Ariana says yes. Zena says yes. And this is a very important question. And don't beat yourself up if you don't know yet. The reason why I'm asking this is because it's very important that you know that after every semester. Every semester. Here's why. You cannot influence, alter, or change what you don't know. If you have a 4.0 GPA, fantastic. If you have a 2.0 GPA, you might want to make some different moves, do some things differently, employ some strategies, maybe get a tutor, maybe look at, your graduation requirements, but it gives you the ability after every semester to adjust, to evaluate where you are and make adjustments so that you can stay on track. The next thing that I would encourage you to do is make sure that you know your school counselor's name. Number 3. And I'm not going to cover all of these in detail, but feel free to read through these while I'm speaking. But there's value in that. If just listening to my story, what happens if I didn't take the time to get to know my school counselor and she didn't know that I wanted to go to Hampton or didn't know that I wanted to major in engineering? It would have been very difficult for her to pull me out of class specifically and say, hey, I thought about you and here's how I can help you. So get to know your school counselor, both as a student and as a parent. I'll tell you, as a parent with my sons, my son's school counselors knew me very well. We were on pretty much a first name basis by their senior year. But it was because I had questions. I wanted to make sure I understood the processes, and we had a good working relationship. All right, so true or false, number 5. Let me know in the chat. The best time to apply to college is in the spring of your senior year. How many of you think that's true? How many of you think that's false? Let me know in the chat. Excellent. I'm very encouraged. Sarah Grant says false. Darlene says false. Cassandra false. India says false. Excellent. All of you are correct. You do not want to wait until the spring of your senior year. In fact, you want to use all your time wisely, and we'll talk more about that. But one of the things I'll quickly say is I encourage students to apply generally in the fall of their senior year. If you can start a little bit earlier, August, September, even better. But certainly the window that I recommend is from September to December. And I'll tell you more about it. What's important with that is colleges have a series of things that happen after you apply. When you apply later, you miss out on financial aid, scholarships, because they give those out on a first come, first served basis. Those who apply early may have more access to certain funding and scholarships than those who apply later. Students also get access to the best housing, because if you apply early and you know which school you want to go to, then you can start kicking in some of those other steps in the process we'll talk about, but you'll be able to pick your dorm. Now, my oldest son, when he was a senior, he had applied early, like I talked about, but he wouldn't pick a school till like March. Well, by the time he did, he was in the worst freshman dorm. And he was not happy about it at all. But as I told him, very humbling, and it should build character. And that's the value of not waiting until the last minute. The next thing that I'll share, number 10, let me know in the chat if you think number 10 is true or false. Social media accounts and your online presence doesn't matter. True or false? Okay, Rashawn says false. AJ says false. Kristen says true. India says true. Well, I'm not sure why India and Kristen says true, but
I
the
should have said false. I didn't mean to, I didn't see the not. No, it does matter. How about it does matter? I
thank
preach this to
you.
my son all the time. Okay.
Good. Thank you for that. And I'm glad you're talking to your son, and I hope all parents are. I know I did with my sons too, because school many students don't realize that once you put out there on social media, you really can't get it back. Even on Snapchat, when you think it disappeared, Miss Christie, it didn't go anywhere. It's still on a server in the cloud somewhere. You just can't access it anymore. But even with that being said, here's what I'll tell you. College admissions officials, employers, recruiters, they all, if you're an athlete, they're all checking you out. They want to know before they meet you, what can I learn about this student? And so you have to see yourself as a personal brand and recognize that how you show up in three key ways matter: online, on paper, and in person. And so you have to manage yourself accordingly so that you put things out there that you actually want people to know about you. And those other things that might disqualify you or deem you ineligible by some, you don't put yourself in those situations because they're looking to see, is this person a fit for my college or university or for my scholarship? Does this person blend in with our culture? Does their behavior indicative of behavior that we actually want to embrace? And if the answer is not, you may actually miss out on some key opportunities. And we certainly don't want that to be your reality. So now that you know where you are with the assessment, make sure you know what your GPA is. Make sure you know who your school counselors are. Make sure you're thinking about yourself differently as we take this journey. As we take the journey, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stop by a little place called Develop a Plan. Have a plan and use your time wisely. This is very important, and I spent a little time on this. Your plan should not be complicated. It should be clear, and it should be effective. I used this approach with my sons. They hated it at the beginning, but as they approached their senior year, they loved me again, and I'm thankful. But we had a plan. If you'll notice, at the bottom of this slide, it gives you the book title, College Planning. It tells you which strategy it is in the footnote here, and then which page numbers you can find me talking about this plan in the book. Here's the value of having a plan. It gives you and your parents opportunity, especially if you're a freshman, a sophomore, even more so if you're a junior or a senior. But it gives you a chance to map out, what do I need to do as a freshman? How do I get ahead of this? What do I need to do as a sophomore, junior, or senior? Along the left-hand side, you'll see your goal or your actual task. You can call it either one. Whether you want to develop your scholar profile or start researching colleges, and it's never too early to start researching colleges, for example, or developing your scholar profile, which we'll talk about. And then you say which type of activity it is, how much is it going to cost in this column here. Why is that important? Because parents need an opportunity and a heads up to be able to make sure that they can cover everything you need each year. You know, your sophomore, junior year, you may be taking an SAT test, an ACT test, or need to prep for that. Put that on there for your sophomore or junior year, and so forth. As my sons hit their senior year, my youngest son, he applied to 13 schools, colleges. Anybody want to take a guess in the chat how much I paid in application fees? Any brave souls? So while you're guessing, I will tell you that they weren't cheap and that the value of having it on your plan is very important. Someone said 250. I see a couple of $1,000, and guess what? India says a lot. India, you're correct. It cost me $980 in application fees for those 13 schools. Imagine if I didn't have a plan, and imagine if it wasn't on my plan so that I could add a total to the bottom of this and see what it would cost me. I would be totally disadvantaged and scrambling trying to figure out, oh my God, Miss Christie said I should be applying from September to December. How am I going to come up with $1,000 in that 2-month window to get all these applications out? So I would encourage you to have your cost specified, whether it's for application fees, whether it's for SAT, ACT, senior fees, pictures, all those things could be on your plan. Make sure you have a start date. When do you need to get this started? hopefully before your senior year in many of these instances, and certainly by a certain time your senior year. And then measure your progress. I'm 75% complete. I'm only 10% complete. I got more work to do in this area. And then in the notes section, put any exceptional things that you need to pay attention to where there's no other place on this spreadsheet to do it. And that way you can keep track if there's something notable that you need to do. Now, I will tell you, each one of my books, and I didn't mention this before, but both of my books, I created a paper student workbook that goes with both the books we talked about. So if you take that college planning book, both in the book, and you can actually download the templates that I'm going to talk about. This is actually a template in my book, and I have encouraged students to use it. I thought it was important not to just tell you what to do, but to give you the practical tools so that you can spend your time on the important things, actually putting the plan together, not trying to figure out how to format a spreadsheet. So you can actually download these tools from my website, or it's also in the book that you see here. But utilize the tools that you'll see me reference. If you don't want to use my tool for your plan, highly encourage you to create a simple spreadsheet similar to this, or more sophisticated if that's your desire, but certainly have a plan in some form or fashion that works for you and your parents. And don't just create the plan, but look at it after every semester, I would say. Revisit and say, did we do the things between this window that we needed to do? And what else do we need to do next? Now, as we talk about having a plan, what really accompanies your plan well is making sure you understand how to use your time wisely. Why? Because that's going to feed into your plan. If there are some things that you've identified you need to do your freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, you want to put those on your plan in the order in which you're going to actually accomplish those items. And so what I do include, both in the book and in the workbook, are checklists for each grade level, starting as early as the 8th grade. If you're in the 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, I want to generally say there's a few things you should be doing. You should be keeping your grades up, staying active in school activities. You should be thinking about what you want to major in. Talk to people in different professions and start asking those questions. Make sure that you're managing, especially in the 8th grade, your grade point average, because my sons were taking high school classes in the 8th grade, and many students are. And you don't realize that those classes you really need to score well in, because they're going to be the first high school grades that are going to hit your high school transcript. And so you want to go into high school if you can. I think my son took Algebra 1 and Spanish 1, and he had a high GPA going into high school. So set yourself up very well as you're entering high school. If you are a junior, you should be doing all the things I just described with your grades and thinking about what you want to major in. But find out your transcript request process at your high school. When I went through this with my son, there were 4 different steps we had to do. And we couldn't afford to wait till the last minute to do those. Otherwise, we would have missed some key deadlines. So find that out early in your junior year so that when you are a senior, you know exactly what you need to do, who you need to go talk to, how much it's going to cost you. Put the cost on your plan, because that was another fee for those 13 schools plus all the scholarships. We had to pay $5 for each transcript after a while. And so you want to make sure you account for those things. I mentioned stay involved, start thinking about what you want to major in, visit colleges. This is for all grade levels. I would take my son every time we went on a trip, whether we were driving, flying, etc. I would encourage you to go and stop by colleges, local colleges in whatever area you're either passing through on a road trip or naturally where your final destination is. And even if you don't do a formal tour, get out and walk around, check out the environment, ask students how they like it there. Get a little bit more interactive in the process so that you can have some good information to narrow down your college choices later. I also encourage students to develop a scholar profile, especially my juniors and seniors. Take both the SAT and ACT test. I will talk more about that. I know with COVID, it's a little bit different right now. Normally, I would tell students to take them both, but now at least take one of the two. And I'll tell you more when I hit that slide, but it's very important. Let's see. Someone asked in the chat, since SAT is not required, should we still take them? I'm so glad you asked. Absolutely, yes. What a lot of schools aren't telling students is while the SAT and or ACT may be test optional or not required at all to get admitted, and I stress admitted into the college, what they're not telling students is some of those same colleges use test scores to determine who they're going to give merit scholarship money to, academic scholarships to. So I had a student last summer, dear friend of mine, her daughter had a 4.3, never took the SAT and ACT test, didn't get a $0 to the top school she wanted to go to in merit scholarships. And it's all because no one told her you don't need it to get admitted, but you need it if you want some certain types of funding. So highly recommend it, especially during COVID. Things have shifted a bit with that. Make sure you start researching financial aid and scholarships. Let me know in the chat, how many of you are having conversations with your parents or parents with your students about how you're going to pay for college? What's your plan for school? Mom, do you have my trust fund ready and set aside for my college tuition? In my son's case, the answer was no. Let's try to look for some scholarships. But find out what your financial situation is. And it's never too early to start researching scholarships. And then make sure you start to think about who can write letters of recommendation for you as a freshman, as a sophomore. In fact, freshmen and sophomores, make a list, keep a list early and start thinking about those things. And if you are an athlete, which my sons were, I would also encourage you to make sure that you set up a profile with the NCAA Eligibility Center, at least by your junior year, if you have not already done so. And that's a whole nother webinar. And I do have a recording for NCAA students if you want more information on what I advise for student athletes. If you are a senior, and I did see some seniors in the chat, so I'm really talking to you. Some of these things you should have already accomplished by this point. It's April this week, end of March, April. Let me know in the chat if you are a senior, if you have already chosen a major and you've already applied to colleges. Let me know in the chat. If you have not, it's okay. You're a little bit behind, but it's not impossible. I would encourage you to stay the course, but make sure you get those applications in, essays written. You should be ordering transcripts, and those should be out, and other getting those letters of recommendations and more. I don't see any seniors in the chat letting me know if they've already started applying to colleges. Let me know, senior parents, if you already started in that process. If you haven't, and I'm asking for a reason so that I can give you some tips about what you may want to do next. Okay, that's scholarships. Okay, looks like she's applied. One parent say that their daughter applied to several schools. Great. All right, so at least she started that process, which is good. Once you apply to college, I would highly recommend that you complete the free application for federal student aid. That is what the federal government uses to make sure that they have your information to determine if you're eligible for any federal and sometimes state government financial aid. The federal government will not give you a penny if you have not filled out that free application for federal student aid. Also, apply for scholarships. I'm going to actually introduce our ASA Omega scholarship a little bit later in the presentation, but you should be looking for scholarships your whole senior year. Do not think that you're going to just apply to colleges and then you have a shortfall with your funding and not take advantage of the scholarship opportunities. And then we'll talk about
Dr. Murray, do you want me to put that link in the chat to the scholarship you just mentioned?
Yes, it's on a slide, but absolutely put it in the chat.
I'll put it in the chat right now.
That would be great. Thank you. Now that you have a plan and you're using your time wisely, you're doing those steps that I just talked about. You should be applying to schools in the fall of your senior year. You should be filling out your free application for federal student aid in the fall of your senior year. You should be using the rest of your senior year to what? Look for money. Make sure your money is right so that you and your parents can pay less out of pocket. Now, what do we want to do next? Once you have put together your plan, I highly encourage you to create a scholar profile. Well, Ms. Christie, you've mentioned that several times. What is it? It's simple. It's a one-page resume or brag sheet or self-assessment, but it's really all about you. It just tells the story on paper One of those three ways I mentioned how you show up. It helps to tell the story of who you are to people who don't know you very well. It gives you a chance to highlight what your educational goals are. Mine would have been I want to go to Hampton University and major in electrical engineering. And any other education facts you want to highlight. I go to North Stafford High School. I have a 3.2 GPA. I'm in these clubs and activities. You want to highlight if you've worked, any employment or community service activities. If you have honors and awards, highlight your accomplishment. This is the time to brag on yourself. It is not the time to be modest and leave out pivotal things that you've done. If you participated in leadership activities, spell them out. And if you have other unique talents and abilities, list them here because this will come in handy in some very key ways. How could you use this one-page resume? And I did this with my niece years ago, it's probably been about 10 years now. I did this with my niece and she used it for her college applications as a way to differentiate herself from the competition. She attached it to the back of her college application, or, when she uploaded her document, she uploaded it. Only upload it or attach it if that college or university, or even if you use it for scholarships, if that entity says you can. If they say, please don't give us any additional documents other than what we asked you for, only give what they asked you for. Also, if they ask you for letters, when you're writing letters of recommendation or you're seeking those out from school officials, imagine if you can give them this one-page resume and it gives them so much more information about you that they just ordinarily would not know. They can write you a more compelling letter. And you can also use it when you sit down to write your essays for colleges and beyond. So having this scholar profile, extremely beneficial. You don't have to try to remember what you did as a freshman when you're a senior. If you are a freshman, create it now. It's as simple as how it looks here. It's very clean. It's formatted well. Very, simple but key categories, same as the ones I previously described. You can actually get it from our website listed below, or if you put in the QR code, it'll take you to where you can download this template as well. But it is a very important tool. I wouldn't recommend going over one page because then nobody's going to look at it except you. And so you really want to make it concise with your wording and get to the heart of telling the story of who you are. Once you have that scholar profile, I want you to do something very important. I want you to look at it. If you're a freshman, you will likely have some gaps and some holes in yours. I don't want you to beat yourself up, whether you're a freshman or a senior, and you say, you know what, I got some areas that I still need to work on. I might need to do more community service or get involved with more school activities, or maybe strengthen my GPA based on what I see on paper here. But as you look at it, just simply work to improve your total profile. And then as I did with my sons, they updated it every summer break and every winter break. So that after every semester, they're like, okay, what did I just do? Let me add what I just did and I don't have to think about it again. And then in the summer, what did I just finish the past spring semester? Let me update it with that as well. And like I said, only include it if that entity says you can attach additional documents. Now that you have this fantastic scholar profile that I've already identified, you can use in at least 4 or 5 different ways. It's going to be a very helpful tool for you. Now, I want you to start thinking about choosing a major. Now, if you create your scholar profile and you look where it says, the objective to attend X university and obtain a degree in X. If you don't know right now which school you want to go to or a degree, it's okay. Just leave it blank. Just set it up just like you see it here and revisit it later and add that information later. But one of the most important steps in this process is choosing a major. And you notice I didn't say choosing a college first. It makes no sense to choose a college before you choose a major. Or at least narrow down your top majors that you're interested in. Because you're going to use that information to do research to make sure the colleges you want to attend actually have that major. So you don't want to pick a college and then you go to school there and then realize when you finally declare a major, they don't even have an engineering program. Why am I here? So you want to do it in reverse. You want to start thinking about your majors and then pick a college. Now, most colleges will tell you that they don't require you to declare a major until the end of your sophomore year of college. But guess what? I don't recommend that. I recommend you at least have one or two options going into college that you're interested in for different reasons. One of which, if you want to look for scholarships, many organizations and companies give out scholarships based on your major. So you could be missing out on some significant scholarship opportunities. I would have missed out on scholarship opportunities had I not known that I wanted to major in engineering. I would have never thought to apply for that scholarship and had my college paid for. So I want you to think about it. Think about what you're interested in as you're thinking about choosing your college major, what you're passionate about, what you have strengths in, what do you do well. Talk to people who know you well, your family, your parents, maybe your teachers. Maybe there's something in school you really take to and you really enjoy doing. But start thinking about those things and researching careers and salaries. I often tell students, before you pick a career or a major, find out what careers are looking for that major and how much do they make annually. Well, Miss Christie, money isn't everything. No, it's not, but it is something. And the goal is to be able to take care of yourself and eat at the end of the day. So you don't want to graduate from college 4 years and say, wait a minute, I'm only going to make $30,000 with this degree. My friend just got a job making 75. How did this happen? Do your research early. Use those smart devices, like I tell my sons, use these things for more than Snapchat and TikTok and so forth. Use them to do some research. Find out, well, let's see, if I have a English degree, I could teach, I could be an editor at a newspaper. Find out those things that you can do to learn more about different professions. Here's the other thing I would encourage you to do. Talk to people. You know people all around you, neighbors, family, friends, teachers. You know so many people that do so many different things already. Do you actually ask them, Miss Christie, what do you like about being an engineer? What don't you like? What's the most difficult part about it? What's the most rewarding? Talk to people and find those things out so that you can be more informed as you're choosing a major. And once you choose a major, make sure you make a list of your top 5 majors so that you can ultimately narrow that down as you're picking schools. And yes, Darlene, these slides will be available after the presentation. So please don't feel like you have to write everything down. I will make those available. So thank you for that question. So now that you're thinking about a major, let's just pick 2. Let's just pick an educator. I want to be a teacher, and maybe you want to be a pharmacist. I'll pick 2 different things. Now you should be researching colleges to see which one has a pharmaceutical program and who has liberal arts education programs. If they don't have your programs, that school probably shouldn't be on your list if you're serious about that major. Did you know that there's over 2,000 colleges in the United States? So what's encouraging is you can find multiple schools that have your major. You just got to do a little research. And as you're looking at those schools, know that some students may decide they don't want to go to school for 4 years. You still want a good job. You still want to have a great profession. And so not every student wants to go to a 4-year school. If you don't, please know that there are vocational trade schools out there where you can get an apprenticeship sort of a skill set for a specific trade or a job, like an electrician, mechanic, HVAC technician, you name it, dental hygienist. And you generally can go to school for about 2 years, and you can obtain a license or certification in a particular area. Or if you decide, well, I want to start out at a community college or junior college and get my associate's degree first, then you can go to a 2-year school. The value in going to a 2-year school is, one, you can decide, do I really want to go on and finish those last 2 years? But I might not, so let me get my associate's degree. And then 2, It gives you the ability to pay for some of those earlier general courses at a much more affordable rate by going to a 2-year school. And then you can still transfer into a 4-year university once you've completed those 2 years. So you have options with that. And then the last option is a 4-year college, where you certainly will work on a 4-year undergraduate degree and walk away with a bachelor's degree. Here's the thing I want you to know. No matter what you do in life, for those students that says, when I finish high school, I'm never going to pick up a book again and learn anything ever. Wrong. Everything you do in life, you will have to get trained, educated, and be willing to learn. So please don't be delusional in thinking that you're never going to have to study, you're never going to have to learn again. Wrong answer. You're going to have to do it, but it could look different depending on the type of school you decide. And even if you want to go into the military, even the military has training. They don't just, sign you up, you take the oath, and they give you a gun and say, go shoot. They want to prepare you. You're going to have to prepare for any profession, whether it's military, vocational, 2-year, 4-year. So start thinking about those different options and thinking about what you may want to do next. Now that you know the different types of colleges, I want to make sure you can differentiate between a public and a private college. Public schools are schools that are primarily funded by federal and state government entities. They get a lot of their money from the government. They're usually bigger than private schools, and they usually have an in-state and an out-of-state tuition fee. If you live in Virginia and you go to school in California and you go to a public school, you'll have to pay their out-of-state tuition fee. But if you live in Virginia and you go to a public Virginia school, it'll be an in-state fee. Those students who go to school out of their home state to a public school, they generally will pay more in tuition than the students who go to school in that state. Very important. And you see how these pieces come together as you're making decisions and putting together your plan? Because they feed into your wallet and your pocketbook, or your wallets, with what you want to do. And you could likely pay more or less depending on the decisions you make. What about private schools? Well, they can be for-profit or nonprofit, but they don't generally get the predominance of their funding from governments. They do get some government funding. There are some programs and grants, etc. But some of that funding, majority of their funding, is not from the federal government or the state government. So they raise money, their alumni gives back heavily, and they pass it on to the students. Private schools only have one tuition rate. They do not have in-school or out-of-school. So when I talked about going to Hampton University, my mother was quick to remind me, private schools cost more than public schools, Christy. I can't afford it. And so knowing those things will help you to make some key decisions. So now that you've heard about public schools and private schools and the different types, I also, as a part of our webinar, want to talk about historically Black colleges and universities and share some facts. So if you're thinking about considering an HBCU, which I am the product of an HBCU, fabulous education for life that I wouldn't trade for anything, consider HBCUs. There are over 107 HBCUs in the United States, and they've existed for almost 200 years, believe it or not. Different schools were, established at different points over that 200-year period of time. And they were created at a time where African American and other students of color were unable to pursue an education at predominantly white universities. So that's why HBCUs were created. And even against those odds, they have certainly been able to provide historically affordable education to millions of students of color and so many different powerful professions. And in fact, our Vice President of the United States is a graduate of an HBCU, Howard University. So for anybody, and I will challenge anyone who wants to discourage students from attending HBCUs to say, well, they're not very high quality or it's going to limit your opportunities. The sky is the limit with an education. And I'm in favor of any college or university where you can get a good education, because it's going to be what you make of it from your personal educational experience. So who's attending HBCUs? The myth is that only African Americans attend HBCUs. Wrong. 74% may be predominantly African American, but there are also White students who attend HBCUs, 11%. Hispanic and Latino students attend HBCUs, 5.1%. And then there are other backgrounds, individuals of color, 9.7%, who attend HBCUs. I haven't seen a college yet that was only attended by one group of people. And so I think it's important for all of us to be exposed to all different type of colleges along our journey to pick where we want to go to school. And then the HBCUs in the United States, they represent 3% of all colleges and universities in the US, and they enroll approximately 12% of all African American students. And they produce 23% of all African American graduates. So those African Americans who are graduating from schools, 23% are graduating from HBCUs. And if they're a STEM baby like I am, HBCUs graduate over 40% of the African American students who are have science, technology, engineering, and mathematics degrees. So I want you to make informed decisions when you're thinking about HBCUs. 50% of African American teachers went to HBCUs. 40% of African American health care professionals did. 70% of African American dentists and physicians. So you're talking about doctors, teachers, people who are making a difference, impactful difference in other people's lives. And 58% of HBCUs offer students the opportunity to study abroad. So you have some very unique opportunities with HBCUs. And I would only encourage all students to do your research and think about what really will be a good fit for your personality, your background, and who may even be able to give you some funding. I don't limit opportunities before they become opportunities. So now, those are the type of colleges. So you're choosing a major, and now I'm encouraging you to choose a college. As you are choosing a college, I certainly want you to use online tools such as the college scorecard.ed.gov, bigfuture.collegeboard, that's the SAT website. They have some great resources to research different colleges, and so does the Common App. I'll talk more about that too. But do some research. Don't just blindly say, oh, I want to go to MIT. But you can't have an intelligent conversation with yourself, yet alone anyone else, as to why you want to go to that school. What's their graduation rate? What's their tuition? What are those factors that really are important to you that will help you to make a sound choice as you're doing research? And that's why taking those tours, whether it's in person or nowadays with COVID, there are a lot of schools that offer 3D virtual tools. Take advantage of those too, just from, what's available online. Think about what you want to major in, how much it's going to cost. Is it an in-state or out-of-state school? Do you want to go to school out-of-state? Is it public or private? What's the class size? I like being in the smaller class size personally because I was able to get more one-on-one attention from my professors. You may want to be in a larger class size, but do what's a good fit for you. Not your parents, not your friends, not your boyfriend, not your girlfriend, but for you. And then make sure you look at campus safety, which was important to me, and any other key factors. And nowadays, make sure you're picking schools that have great distant learning or blended learning capabilities. We learned one thing during COVID. Some schools were really prepared for online learning and some were not. So that should be another factor that you might want to consider. Once you have those list of colleges and you've done some research, narrow it down to your top 5 to 10 colleges. And here's another template out of my book. It's page 69 of my book. But it's a spreadsheet, and I call it a college requirement spreadsheet. I use this for my sons. They hated it because I made them do all the research and fill it in. But I did it on purpose because I wanted them to know what they were doing. But it has the school's name, where they're located, whether they're accepting college tours or not, whether they are allowing you to apply online or not, how much their yearly tuition is, what the fee for the application fee, all those key things that you need to know. Even the admissions requirements. What's their SAT requirement? What's their GPA requirement? When is their application deadline? Does it require me to have an essay or letters of recommendation? If so, how many? So put those things on your college requirements list. Rank them. Maybe even put them in order by the tuition or maybe by your top choices, whatever's your preference. My son did it by his top choices. You could also do it by when their deadlines are for the applications to be complete. So if the application is due in September, you might want to list that first. And those that may not be due until December, you might want to list those later down on your list. But have some sort of approach. Here's the value of having it in one place. You can print out your list when you're done, and you can say, oh, this school is much more expensive than I thought. Oh, this one doesn't even require an application fee. What? I got to write 3 essays for that one? Oh, this one doesn't require an essay at all. You can see it all in a snapshot in one place. Very, 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 very useful with me and my sons. Now that you've picked your colleges, number 4, what do you do? Now you're ready to apply. You are a junior. Juniors, you should be using your summers to your advantage. As I talk about the parts of this college application, and we talk about applying to college, start thinking as a sophomore and a junior, what can I do over the summer? I don't recommend seniors waiting until September to start writing essays when they're in their senior year. What did you do all summer? You mean to tell me you couldn't take a day a week or a few hours one day a week and write a couple of essays every week during the summer and get those over with? So I recommend that you do that. But I want to talk about the 5 parts, the basic parts of a college application. 1, you have your the college application itself. You have the official transcripts, the essays, letters of recommendation, and your test scores. Each college applications process is different. It's not a one-size-fits-all, so please don't think, well, Duke said I needed this, but Virginia Tech says I don't need that. They're all different, and you have to read and follow their instructions. Many colleges give you multiple ways to apply, whether it's by mail, electronically through their direct school website, or through a portal. And they certainly have different variations in their application fees, anywhere from $0 to up to $100, or, kind of the average of what I've seen helping my sons and even other families. Now, if you are a student who has financial challenges or maybe come from a low-income household, check with your school counselors or that college or university. They may actually be able to help you to get your application fees waived. Very important. I don't want any student to be discouraged from getting a college education because they can't afford it, both with the application process or with looking for scholarships. There's many scholarship entities that are looking for students who have a financial need to give money to help you to get to school. So please don't walk away from this webinar thinking, we can't afford it, I can't go. On the contrary, you don't know how you can afford it yet, but follow Dr. Christie Murray's strategies, and I would love to see you on the other side of going to school debt-free. All right, so I'm off my soapbox. So when to apply to colleges, and we talked about it. I'm not going to belabor it. September to December, your senior year. I do want to introduce you to the difference between an early decision and an early action. It's kind of confusing, but it's not really. Early decision means you have one school that if you could, that's absolutely where you want to go. You can apply. Usually most colleges offer early decision from November to early, as you know, that the deadline is usually around November 1st through the 15th. But you can only apply to one school by early decision. Why? Because it will create a binding agreement once you apply to that school that if you're accepted, that you're likely to want to go to that school as your first choice. So that's what you're doing. You're sending the strongest message that that school is your first choice. Early action is if you want to apply, and you can apply to as many schools as you like, but you want to apply early. You want to get your applications in by November. You can apply to many schools, and then you can still pick later which of those schools, if any, that you actually want to go to. The benefit of applying to colleges early in that window that I'm sharing with you, September to December, is because most colleges give out their money on a first come, first served basis. And you should also be completing your free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, in September or October of your senior year. And as you create that FAFSA, you'll need to specify which schools you want to send your financial information to. So that's why you have to know the schools early, because it kicks in some other things. Also, when you're taking the SAT and ACT test, they want you to specify who do you want us to send your test scores to. So you have to have some schools in mind. And then as you're applying to these schools, you're likely to hear back if you do early decision and early action. Most of those schools will let you know first before other students who apply later if you've been admitted or not. So the earlier you can find out you've been admitted, the better position you'll be. And don't forget, National Decision Day is in May of each year, May 1st. I don't encourage you waiting until May to actually pick the school you want to attend. Let's say you applied to all your schools by December. You get your acceptance letters back. You have them all back in January. Fantastic. You want to wait until you get your financial aid award letters, and we'll talk about that in the next webinar that I want to encourage you to sign up to. But guess what? Never pick a school before you find out how much money they're giving you and how much financial aid you can get. Otherwise, you could be paying a lot more, and you can be shocked by the sticker price because you haven't looked at the financial ramifications of your decision. Now, as you apply to schools, how many of you have heard of the Common Application, the Common App? Hopefully you have. Let me know in the chat if you have, yes or no, if you've heard of the Common App. I love it. I used it with my son. He was able to apply for 10 of those 13 schools through this portal. And there's over 900 colleges and universities who are members of this Common App portal. It's one portal where you can create an account. You can research all of the colleges that are in there, all those requirements that I talked about earlier, and you putting them on a list and knowing who's offering what. You can do them all through the Common App. Once you do that, you can actually apply to those colleges through the same portal. The value of applying through this portal is you can share your information, your demographic and background information one time, and you can reuse it through this portal to apply to multiple colleges, which is fantastic. This application for the Common App usually opens on August 1st. So that means you can technically start applying to colleges in August. For those who are ambitious and prepared because they use their summers to their advantage, highly recommend you getting started. Only thing about it is most high schools haven't started quite yet, or they haven't geared up for their transcripts to get out yet. So you'll have to make sure you account for your transcripts getting sent to those colleges once your school gets underway in the fall pretty quickly if you apply early. Each college may have an application fee. And in fact, 45% of those schools in the Common App don't even require they're free to apply to. So that's another advantage by using the Common App. But you have to look for each school because their application fees may vary. Now, since we're talking about HBCUs, I would be remiss if I didn't also introduce you to the Common Black College app. Works very similar. There's over 60 HBCUs who are members of the Common Black College app, and you pay, I think, a one-time fee, maybe $20, and you can apply to your top HBCUs that are members of this portal and upload test scores and do your research for those HBCUs as well. The good thing about it is once you pay that $20 upfront fee, you can apply to multiple HBCUs for no additional cost. So that's an advantage of doing it. I actually met the gentleman, Robert Mason, who's the founder of the Common Black College app, speaking at a conference a few years ago. Very passionate about it and certainly really want to help, bring students to a central place to get information on HBCUs. Now, once you have, the parts of the application, you know where to go to apply. You can also go directly to a college's website to apply to school. You don't have to go through one of those portals, but they may be very helpful. You also need your transcripts, and we've talked a little about it. I'm very adamant about transcripts. Bless high schools very much, but it is your responsibility, students and parents, to request your transcripts and comply with your high school's requirements of getting those transcripts out in a timely manner. Most schools don't prefer to work on a last minute. This application has to be in by the 31st of March. Can you get the transcripts out to the school by then? They generally don't prefer to work that way. Give them plenty of time by knowing the process. And make sure that if there are parent permissions that have to be completed and release forms, do all that stuff early. I did it my son's junior year. They were like, but Christy, your kids aren't seniors yet. I know, but put it in the system and keep it on file so I don't have to circle back around and do it twice. So do what you can early. Don't leave everything to your senior year. And then make sure that your high school actually sent out your transcripts. Circle back around and make sure your colleges got them, your scholarship entities have them. And make sure you double check with the entities who are going to receive them, the colleges, the scholarship organizations. Hey, this is Christy. Did you get my transcripts by the deadline? Or you want to make sure before your deadline that they're received. So those are my tips to make sure this part of the process is certainly where it needs to be. Next, I'm going to talk about the next two parts of the college application together, the essay and the letters of recommendation. Please know that there's two types of essays and there's two types of letters of recommendation. You use essays and letters of recommendation when you're applying to college. They'll be written that says, this is why I want to attend your college or university. Your letters of recommendation will say, I recommend Christy to attend Hampton University to be admitted to Hampton University because of X, Y, and Z. That's one way. The second way is for scholarships. Your essay writing and getting letters for scholarships is worded a little bit differently. You're telling, here's why you should give me your scholarship. Here's why I recommend Christy getting your scholarship. So when you are writing, when you are requesting letters of recommendation, make sure you ask your requesters to give you both. Their letters could be written similarly, but they're going to be written with a little bit of a different recommendation slant. Very important. So first, let's talk about essays. Very important, especially during COVID. As someone pointed out, a lot of schools don't require test scores to admit you. Well, if they're not looking at test scores, what are they looking at? They're looking at your writing. They're looking at your letters of recommendation. And so it's important that you spend time because this is the way they're going to get to know you differently. Make sure you write your essays early, junior year, if not sooner, summer of your junior year, and prepare and revise those essays over time. Make sure you save all your content. Never throw away essay writing. Even if you think it's not good, save it anyway on your computer because you can pull in pieces for future essays. Get someone to critique it. I have a bachelor's degree, 2 master's degrees, and a doctorate degree, and I have done everything up to writing letters to reports to Congress. I still have people critiquing my writing. Please don't be so arrogant to think that just because you think you're a strong writer, that you couldn't benefit from having another set of eyes for grammatical purposes, sentence structure, and just plain wordiness, how to be more concise with your writing. So get someone you trust to look at your essays. Never send out an essay that nobody's ever looked at before and wonder why you don't get a scholarship or, admitted to a school. Make sure you use, you can take advantage of software such as Grammarly and websites that'll help do the proofreading with you. I did that with my graduate school work, and it'll spit you out a nice report of things that you need to modify and improve. Please follow directions. If they say don't go over a certain word count, don't go over that word count. If they say type it, don't handwrite it. Follow their instructions. Don't attach additional documents if they say you can't. And make sure you speak to the topic at hand. If someone says, Christy, tell me about your leadership. Tell me about an example where you exhibited leadership skills. Please don't write about your community service unless it's affiliated with you talking about leadership. Stay on topic and save all your work as we talked about and demonstrate that you know something about the entity, whether it's a college or a scholarship organization. They'd love to know that you understand that their core values are trust, commitment, and respect or something, or that you can align or there's something about that school that resonates with you. And also make sure that you share how you will make a difference. I had coffee actually with a young lady. Her name is Maya Mundale. You can actually look her up on social media. She received over $1 million in scholarship offers, over $1 million. And I know there's a student in Stafford County who recently did that too. But here's the thing. I said, Maya, what did you do with your essay writing? What made the difference? She was a recipient of like the Bill and Melinda Gates Scholarship and many others. And she says, well, you have to write about something that's bigger than you. You talk about yourself, you tell your story, what you want to do, but you also need to say and talk about how you plan to use what you learn to make a difference in your community and the world, something other than just you. So advance your writing, be compelling, be authentic, but please bridge it to something more than just about you. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about this slide. I do want to tell you, go back to the basics of your English class. Essays should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the first paragraph, your introductory paragraph, highlighting maybe 3 key points you want to talk about in your essay. I call it a thesis statement. You probably heard of that before. And then each one of the paragraphs below covers each one of those topics. The first in the thesis, the second in the third, and then you bring it all back together in the conclusion. And I actually have some YouTube videos on this if you want more guidance on essays. But there's different topics. I've listed some. I'm not going to get into them, but you can see there's all kind of topics you're likely to get an essay prompt on. In fact, when you're looking at the Common App, some of those colleges give you choices on essay prompts that you can write to or you can choose from. So you might want to choose similar prompts because, hey, I already have an essay written on that. So I'm going to do all these, on leadership because I already have that essay written. Save yourself some time. Now I want to remind you, as I said earlier, as early as your freshman year, start thinking about those teachers that you had a great relationship with or who were fond of you, and start making a list of who can write letters of recommendation for you. And then provide them your scholar profile and say, here's my scholar profile to help you to write about me. And then ask them if it's okay if you actually make copies of their recommendation so that you can use it over and over and over again. As you do that, ask them for generic letters. What do you mean by generic? Don't make it specific to a particular college. Don't say, Dear Hampton University. Instead, what you should encourage them to say is, Dear College Admissions Official. You see how you can use that multiple times if it doesn't have the school's name in it? Because you don't want to send a letter to Hampton that you had written for Hampton to Virginia Tech. That's not going to look good. So as more as you can begin your salutation with Dear Scholarship Entity or Dear College Admissions Office, the better off you'll be being able to reuse those multiple times. Make sure you give your recommenders all the instructions and make sure their deadline to get the letter back to you is well in advance of your deadline when it's actually due. Don't wait till the last minute and then think they're going to jump through hoops. I don't operate like that, and I would prefer it if students gave me a lot of time. And make sure you have everything sent in, and especially your recommendations by the deadline. Here's something I offer to students. How many students would actually pre-draft their own letter of recommendation? Now, I'm going to give you how it could work. I'm going to pick on someone in the audience. I'm going to pick on Miss Natalie. Miss Natalie, I'm a student, and I attended your English 11 course last year. And it's going to go like this, students, because sometimes students want me to tell them how to talk to people, surprisingly. How could I do that? Hi, Miss Natalie. How are you? I don't know if you remember me, but I'm Christy from your English 11 class. Well, guess what? I'm a senior this year, and I'm applying to colleges, and I'm working on scholarships, and I would love it if you could write a letter of recommendation for me. Here's my scholar profile. It'll tell you everything you need to know about me, in addition to what you may already know from me attending your class. And I took the liberty of pre-drafting a letter of recommendation for you for your consideration that I love for you to tailor and customize to help you to write a more compelling letter about me. Now, and I'm happy to email that to you. Now, Miss Natalie, can you come off mute and let me know how likely would you be to actually write that letter for a student?
More likely than if I didn't receive it in that format. It gives me something to start with. I can build from that. I can tailor and add more to it, but it gives me a starting basis. So for that reason, I would absolutely respond.
Thank you very much. And I'll tell you, that's usually the case because you have value added Miss Natalie's time. She doesn't have to take long trying to do all that extra stuff. I had a student do that to me. I was watching, I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. I was watching a football game on a Sunday. He reached out and said, hey, could you write a letter of recommendation providing me exactly what I talked about? By the time halftime was over, I had already looked at his letter, looked at his scholar profile, added some additional things that I already knew I wanted to say about that student, signed it, scanned it, and sent it back to him during the game. So do things to help yourself so that help other people to help you throughout the process. That's one of the key things that I try to work with students on. This is how it looks. Yes, Miss Christie is not just telling you to do it. She gives you a template. It's in the book, in the workbook, both. But here's how it looks. It's formatted. You can fill in the blanks about yourself, some great, phenomenal adjectives, and talk about certain things, how you demonstrated exceptional X by doing Y. But it's already kind of giving you a roadmap of a template to follow. Highly encourage you to take advantage of it. Now, I want to talk about the last part of the college application, and this is the SAT, ACT test. Now, many students are thinking you don't have to take them right now. My recommendation is that you what? Still take at least one of these tests for merit scholarship purposes, even if the school says you don't have to. Because also scholarship entities will sometimes ask you for your SAT scores too. So please don't limit yourself by not taking them. If you can take both tests, great. If not, I would certainly choose one. But what I do will advise that I'm so glad the SAT has changed their format since I was in school, because it was totally out in left field with the analytical approach they took. But they've revamped their whole test to where it's actually based on things you learned in high school. Who knew? So it's more aligned with how the ACT focuses on actual subject matter you've learned in high school than it used to. The key difference between the SAT and ACT, the ACT has one math section, but it has a science section. The SAT does not have science. It has two math sections in its place. One you can use with a calculator and one you cannot. And I do want to reiterate that you should be sending your test scores to those colleges that you already put on your list from step 3. I think it was step 3 in the process. But make sure that you specify the colleges. Now, most students say, well, Miss Christie, well, how do I know which test to take? It's really up to your discretion which one you naturally test better at. If you love science, I would recommend you take the ACT because it has a science section. If you love math, maybe take the SAT. But it's your choice. Most colleges accept both tests. And if you look at this color-coded map in the right-hand corner, top right-hand corner, the purple sections are the sections where the ACT tests are predominantly taken by students. I'm not saying that they don't take the SAT at all, but predominantly they take the ACT in those purple bluish areas. And the SAT is taken in those orange looking areas along the map. But certainly you can decide which tests you want to take. For those who are planning to take the tests coming up between now and through the summer, here are the upcoming dates for you to consider. And the SAT registration site, collegeboard.org on the left, and the ACT.org on the right. If you're a student who may be financially challenged or low income and you need assistance with your registration fees, because it does have a fee to take the test, work with your school counselors. They may also have a means to help you get your SAT or ACT test fees waived. All right. Now, what do I recommend, particularly outside of a COVID environment? But if you are a sophomore, junior, heed this very carefully. Take the test, pick a test. So if you decide you're going to take the SAT test, take it now, juniors. Figure out how you naturally score on it, sophomores or juniors. And if you find, I did okay, but I really could strengthen my scores, get in a prep course. Take a prep course, and I'm actually recommending some in this table on the screen here, and I'll share these slides. And then immediately after you finish the prep course, take it again. If you finish the prep course on a Thursday, I did this with my niece, and I had her align her prep course. It ended on a Thursday and she took the test on a Saturday. Why would I encourage you to do that? Because who wants to keep all those strategies in their head any longer than they have to? Not me. So you want to take the test while it's all still fresh in your mind. And students who actually prep and then take the test again, they actually 67% usually improve their scores. So use those things to help you. Also, you'll notice that the cost points in this table with some of those prep resources that I'm highlighting, there's different price points. There's some that are free, there's some that's $40, and there's some that may be a little bit more expensive. Do what you can afford, but the value is that I would recommend is just preparing, doing some prep work. Whew, that's a lot. And so what I do want to say is with your college application, you have prepared and you have gotten pretty much everything in. Follow the directions, adhere to the deadlines, and create a simple checklist to make sure you have everything that college has asked you for. You're sending it to them by the deadline. I did this with my sons. We didn't do anything without a checklist because we didn't want to miss anything. If they say 2 essays or 2 letters of recommendation, you make sure you have 2. But create a checklist as you move forward. So now that you have applied, I want to encourage you to do these things. Finish high school strong. I know seniors have senioritis. Juniors, as you hit your senior year, keep your foot on the gas pedal as you're making this journey. Do not stop until you graduate. Once you've applied to colleges, you and your parents should be getting all those college acceptance letters back, keeping them, read them all. Don't just get them and say, hey, I got in and sit it down. A lot of those acceptance letters have next steps. They have deadlines and instructions. I just worked with a student who missed a deadline, got into school in January, didn't look back at her letter until March, missed the deadline that specified when, if she was interested in enrolling, then she'd missed the enrollment deadline. And so she had to go back and ask for more provisions. Make sure you complete your FAFSA. Make sure you review. Once you complete the FAFSA, all those same colleges that admitted you should send you a financial aid award letter. Review them all and compare them. And make sure that you're looking at the cost as you're picking schools. Keep applying for scholarships the entire time you are in high school, your senior year, and throughout college. You can apply for scholarships the entire time you're in college. So don't just stop if you have financial shortfalls. Apply. And then put together, now is a good time when you have some downtime, put together a list of things that you'll need for college. Start early with that. Don't wait till August and you're going to school in August because there's a lot of things and it gets expensive. And they make great graduation gifts, so you can actually set up a registry and get help with some of those things if you have them on a list. And then choose which college you attend. Don't wait till the last minute in May if you can afford to choose your colleges early, because there are fees that you will have to pay. So once you've done those things and you got the deadlines, I would encourage you to set up a student email for yourself. I would encourage you to be mindful of the deadlines because you may have to pay enrollment fees, student orientation. You might have to register for those things, even on-campus housing fees and deposits. So you want to open up your correspondence and use those to your advantage. And then any health forms, please note that most college students have to complete health forms before you can actually show up on campus in the fall. So pay attention to those details. And make sure you order your transcripts before right after you graduate from that college. So my key takeaways to you as I conclude: start early, use your time. Every year you're in high school in the summers, track your progress. Parents and students, I did this with my sons. I set up a joint email address in high school for my son because they weren't checking emails daily. Most schools and most college, most scholarship entities are sending things via email these days. So have a central email address that both of you have the login information to, and you can both check that from your phone, ideally, because otherwise you could miss out on some key deadlines. Now, with that being said, I just want to remind you that, and we actually don't have a survey. I meant to take this slide out, but I'm approaching the end of my talk, but I do want to remind students to certainly take advantage of any upcoming events. If you have friends who you think could benefit from tonight's event, we're doing the same thing tomorrow for those who may speak Spanish. So if you have Spanish speaking friends at school, encourage them to sign up for the same webinar tomorrow night. We want to make sure they have that information. And then for you, if you thought this was good on the admissions, join us on April 4th for our college funding and scholarship webinar, where I will get into a lot more detail on the show me the money part of this whole process. So the information is here. We'll start again at 6:30. And your school has the email address, and it'll also be in this presentation. And we'll have a Spanish version on April 5th. So encourage your friends to attend that one if they desire it in Spanish as well. And then my sorority, we have a host of upcoming events that we want to make you aware of. We have an SAT prep event coming up on April 24th, an ACT prep event on May 22nd. And then we're going to have HBCU and a PWI college official panel discussion, predominantly white institution panel discussion on June 5th. And we're going to talk about essays over the summer. So join us for all of these. If you register at the link above, it'll give you all of these activities where you can register individually for them. And then Kristen already talked about our ASA Omega Scholarship. We give away scholarship funding to students who live specifically in Stafford, Fauquier counties, and Quantico. So if you are a high school student, take down our website, because we give scholarships on service leadership, Think HBCU, those who are attending vocational and community colleges. So not just four-year colleges, continuing students and students who are interested in majoring in the arts. And our scholarship application is open right now for high school seniors. Now, I know I am short on time, but I do want to give away 2 student giveaways today. I do want to give away 2 copies of my college planning book. So I have a question. The first person in the chat who can name one fact about an HBCU will be my first giveaway winner. I'm waiting to see an HBCU fact about a historically Black college or university. While I wait on that to come in, I had a question about dual enrollment. I'll go ahead and cover that now. If you are interested in dual enrollment, I highly encourage. Thank you, Zena. Looks like
Zena and Santa. She said, Santa said it can admit everyone, and then Zena came in second with there are 107 HBCUs. So those
okay. And Santa, what's Santa's last name?
Anna's. Is it? Yeah.
Okay, Kristen, if you can provide me with their names, because I'm not able to see them to write them down, that would be great for the giveaway. So thank you very much, both of you. That is correct.
How many books do you have? Giveaways do you have?
We're going to do two of this book, the green book, college planning. So 2 student giveaways. Now, there was a question about dual enrollment. I highly recommend it. It's a great way to reduce college cost if they have the programs that you're interested in studying. Work with your high school counseling department to get set up with that. If you want to go to a community college such as Germana, for example, the first 2 years, and then go to a 4-year institution, it's a great way to save and the cost of tuition. It's a lot cheaper than going to a 4-year school for the first 2 years.
And Dr. Murray, India came in right after Zena, number 3, with the comment more than African Americans attend. So maybe if we have a workbook we could give her.
Actually, we'll give away 3 giveaways.
Okay, yeah, everybody. Now, okay.
And we'll give them both. We'll give all 3, both the books and the workbooks.
Okay, so that's if Santa and Zena and India could send me their contact information, I will I'll get it to Dr. Murray, and I'm putting my contact information in the chat right now.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Now, I would invite all of you to join my Scholarships for Scholars group. I know we're going to talk about funding in another session, but there's a lot of information I put out, tips, scholarships to families. And whether it's on Instagram or if you're on Facebook, it's the same title for each. But this, I put some phenomenal resources in both of these exclusive groups, and it'll help you tremendously. And it'll be in the slides that I share with you. Feel free to follow me on social media. I'm on TikTok, Christie, and other platforms. I share a host of information there. And for those who may be interested in other resources I have, check out my website, investthelletterin.others.com. And just as important, we have a host of other recordings on so many different topics that we would certainly want to invite you to take advantage of. So with that being said, I am finished and I'm slightly over my time, but I apologize for that. But I hope you found it useful. And I don't know, Kristen, if there's any time for any questions. I tried to answer some as
I saw some in the chat. I just want to wrap up and say thank you, Dr. Murray. This was very informative. I want to encourage students, before you leave, if you could please put in the chat specifically what high school you're from, that would give us great information. And don't forget, please visit your school counselors because they actually have these books as well. We gave them to them last year. This information is tried and true. As she was speaking last year and this year, I noticed these are some of the things that I'm doing with my own little one. We're doing the ACT. We already did the SAT. We're doing the ACT April 2nd. And we're also doing those college tours. And when looking at schools, like you said, you really do need to make sure you're looking at your major and what kind of maybe social things that you want to be involved in while you're there. So thank you so much, Dr. Murray. This was awesome, and you made me feel like I was doing good things. Does anyone have, we'll take 2 quick questions. Brooke Point. Anyone with 2 quick questions?
Maybe I answered everything.
We got a lot of Brook Points. We have someone at Mountain View who travels to Brook Point, so it looks like Brook Point got the word out very well. So
Good.
All righty. Well, hopefully we'll see everyone same time, same place next Monday for more information. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
all.
Dr. Christie.
You're welcome. Best of luck, students.
Thank you.